let me lay the foundation for today's conversation. Now, I'll remind you that it's really about football. But we can't talk about it without putting it in the context of other sports. So here's how we'll start. The All Africa Games are coming up. We're just about 25 days away from it. The president reminds us all of that.
I acknowledge the Minister for Youth and Sports, staff of the ministry, and the local organizing committee to go all out and organize the best African Games in history. Our nation is expecting some 5,000 elite athletes, some 3,000 experienced officials, thousands of fans in the country, together with an estimated global audience of 2.2 billion people watching through traditional and social media.
So I want you to understand what the president is saying. We're hosting the All Africa Games. This is a cash cow for any serious country. This is an opportunity to draw attention to our nation in the most positive way possible. All we have to do is put our best foot forward. So what's our best foot? Currently, our team of athletes are camped somewhere in Cape Coast, waiting for a measly, meager, paltry, insignificant, in the grand scheme of things, $100,000 odd just to help with their preparation. Sikanembe. And while they are sitting there waiting for them, this is, by the way, this is not money for them to just go and blow in town. This is money that they need for the preparation for this event that the president points out how important it is on the global stage. If even only the athletes and their officials come, that's 8,000 people coming to spend time and money in Ghana. Is that not worth spending $100,000? Even if it's only the athletes who will come and nobody will even watch it on TV, nothing else will come of it. Even that is worth, but the money hasn't come. That is the frame into which I now place football. Football, where we just spent $3 million to send our black stars that they are, to AFCON to go and play 3 games and lose and come for the second time in a row. Do you now understand the kind of black hole that football is becoming in this country, where we are pumping money into it, money we cannot even account for, where corruption is rearing its ugly head at every opportunity, yet the results are 0, 0, 0, 0 all the time? I mean, at some point, are we not going to get sick of this? So today's conversation is to diagnose this problem, and like the smart people I know we are, try and solve it. I'm so excited. Atsu is here with us. Atsu, is always a pleasure. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you, Kujo.
I believe we'll also be joined by Fentuo, who will connect electronically any moment from now. I understand you guys are, of course, in mourning. One of the Black Stars who collapsed,
passed
died
away last year.
Yes.
It was caught in the rubble of the Turkey earthquakes last year, Christian Atsu. So today, I think, marks a year since his passing, and there's going to be a memorial service for him at Ghana. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as we remember Christian, we want to, in his honor, solve this problem. So I'll start with you. I mean, first of all, give us the latest on this horrible funding situation with the All Africa Games.
So it's not just the money issue that we have had. I think, and Joy Sports has covered the preparations extensively. Fent has done some reports. I have. In terms of the infrastructure, they have done some brilliant work, and I think that for those who have been following our work on the Joy News channels, you would see what has been going on at Boteman. You would also see
the new arena.
Exactly, the sports complex. You would also see the University of Ghana facility and the facelifts, or the attempts to completed. So that side, in terms of infrastructure, they've done quite some work there. The problem has to be in the preparation of Team Ghana, which, for all intents and purposes, is rather belated, because when you are hosting a game like this and events like this, and just to put this in proper context, this was supposed to happen last year. So presumably Team Ghana should have been ready by July 2023. We got lucky. President Akufo-Addo intervened in the whole standoff between Anoka and Oxa, and the owners of the games, that's the African Union, resolved that matter, and so the games got postponed to next month.
So we had even more time.
More time to prepare for Team Ghana. So when we talk about Team Ghana, we're talking about the various federations and the teams. So the athletics teams, the Black Bombers, that's the national boxing team. Then you talk about weightlifting, all of those that are going to compete in, including the exhibition sports, e-sports, the Olympic sports, all of those. This time around, we're going to have, I think, 8 Olympic sports, 7 as qualifiers for the games. 2 weeks ago, the Olympic Committee informed the Sports Ministry that they needed some financial assistance to prepare their teams. Now, the timing of this request itself for me was a bit problematic, because if you have been preparing your team way earlier, or if you had presented a plan that had been approved way earlier, that plan would entail the cost of preparing Team Ghana, where the team was going to camp, for how long they were going to camp, the size of Team Ghana, or the Olympic or the athletics team that was going to compete at the games. And based on all of those considerations, you will then present a budget. But the idea that they asked for $50,000 and they got told by the sports ministry that there is no money was quite problematic.
How much again?
$50,000. That's for the Olympic team.
Wow.
Yeah. And to get that sort of response that there is no money is quite problematic. And it's not just them, because it's not only in athletics that we're going to participate. There is boxing, there's football, right? As we speak, the Black Queens who have qualified for the first time in 5 years for the African Women's AFCON are owed monies that are not crazy money. So we're talking between $7,000 to $10,000. Yes, per player. Kojo, yes. So I'm bringing all of these into it just to give people a sense of what the problem is.
How underfunded everything else is besides football.
Exactly. So you have a situation where your best bet is that the overseas-based athletes who are having access to better facilities, because a number of them are in schools, and because they are in schools, they have access to those facilities owned by the school. So if you look at Ghana's Sprint team, the bulk of them are in the United States, right? And that's where Azamati, Joe Paul, and all of these guys who have been excelling in the last couple of years have come from. But for those who are based in Ghana here, whose federations require money to fly them out for competitions, yes, and to be fair to them, I think boxing have moved to, is it Cameroon or Zambia, where they were having some Olympic qualifiers there. I think 3 of our swimmers are currently in Doha for the World Athletics Championships, and a few of the other federations have moved out. But the point here is that all of these things should have happened 3 months, 5 months, probably 6 months before, because this was a games that was supposed to be held in August of 2023. The postponements gave you more time to prepare. More time means that now your athletes, your footballers, your boxers could enter into more competitions and actually be in a better shape ahead of the games. So conversations about that $50,000 would have then been and should have been a supplementary budget, right? Because presumably you would have presented a budget that would have been approved,
precisely,
or been whittled down or amended, whatever it is, but you would have had something to work with.
Exactly.
So based on that, the quality of that preparation, we would then at that point be able to say that, okay, the extra 6 months that we have before the game due to the postponements, we are going to pump in extra money for 2 or 3 competitions.
To be even more prepared.
Exactly. Because we don't want a situation where the athletes, all of them will go to sleep and then we call them back a month or two to the game. So this conversation about the monies that we're hearing about in the past month should have been cases of supplementary budgets.
Right.
So for boxing, who are going for the Olympic qualifiers, for weightlifting, for football, for all of these should have been supplementary budgets. Now, I was told on Tuesday when we met the CDM, he told us that the team has moved from Cape Coast to Accra. So in the coming week, yes, they have now moved from Cape Coast to Accra because now this has to be the final leg of their preparations for that. So, but for some of the federations, we are fortunate in the sense that a number of the athletes are not based in Ghana. So I'll give you an example. For swimming, we are going to present a team of 14 swimmers. 12 of them are based outside. So they will have access to those facilities. But even then, they are coming to compete for Ghana. The federation should have presented or made money available to them. Money they could use to enter into competitions, right? Get access to facilities that they can train and prepare for, because we don't have them in Ghana. What we've built at Boteman is brilliant. And when I spoke to some of the swimmers there, I think the story aired on Wednesday, you got a sense of how superior it is to a lot of the facilities on the continent. So the swimmers do appreciate it. But when was this ready? Right.
How much use will they get of it even before?
Given how close it is. Right. So going forward, what you would have expected was that by this point, we're talking about supplementary budgets. By this point, we're talking about the athletes beating down the times that they had recorded and getting into competitive zones as far as medals are concerned. That is what will give you the moral rights to then say that if you make the medal zones, you are entitled to $100,000, right? Because then you have invested into the preparation of the athletes who over time have been able to compete. And then you say that, okay, based on our investment, based on your progress, we think there is a good chance of making the medal zone or finishing on the podium. And so we're going to do this. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen. I mean, even for the sprinters, who some people have got some faith in, look, they break their back. Before the last World Athletics Championships, the last time Ghana's sprinters met was in Morocco for the African Games in Rabat, I think 2019. So for a 3-year period, our sprints team had not assembled anywhere on the planet.
Meanwhile, they'll run relays and things together.
In school. So that is where they do their individual training.
What I mean
but for
is,
us,
as a team,
yes, we would expect
in this
that.
contest,
They will
run relays.
They will.
Meanwhile, up until Durban, they hadn't even met.
Up until, I think, 2 years ago. So there was a 3-year gap between their last meets in Rabat and then what happened at the World Athletics Championships. And fortunately for us, shortly after that, there was the Birmingham Games, the Commonwealth Games. And so that also meant that they had to stay together for a bit, train together, and then go there. But even that had its own challenges because of that disgraceful story of someone forgetting to enter Ghana's team to go and compete.
Hey, is that person still at post?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
As the conversation progresses, we will give you a number of similar instances where people's negligence have resulted in Ghana being sanctioned in football, in men's football, in women's football, where we have been banned because people could not do their jobs.
Most recent one being the women's under 17, right?
Yeah, and before that, 2014. Yeah.
Let's bring in Fentuo Tahiru. Fent, of course, is actually at the funeral that you mentioned earlier, but he's able to join us on the phone. Fent, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning.
So, I mean, look, as we place everything in context, the puzzles start to come together to form the horrific picture of Ghana sports. So, with the update from Atsu, the contrast is clear. We completely underfund every other sports and then waste the money on football where we are getting no results. How much of this factored into the demonstration that you and others embarked upon on Valentine's Day?
Well, I think it's It's a problem that has been in existence as long as possible. I think ever since I got into this job, there's always been a conversation about other disciplines being implemented at the football. And even when it's football, it's just black stuff. So we don't even do all the other football well. It's just black stuff. And even for that, despite all of the resources, the time, the energy, the money that's been pumped into the Black Stars over the last 20 odd years, we've got absolutely nothing to show for it. At least we qualified for consecutive World Cups in the past. But the situation at present, I think since 2013, we've not presented 10 Black Stars team since then. That's 8 years of absolutely nothing with 10 for millions and millions of dollars. So I think for the demonstration, the team was clear. Even if you are going to concentrate on only just the Black Stars, it's important to do it well. Because that in itself has now become an absolute for unbridled levels of corruption, where the people in charge of running our national team have cared absolutely nothing about the success of the team except what it could potentially bring financial. And that selfishness and greed and complete neglect of national good is why our national team have been as far as they have been. So structurally, a lot of things are wrong. Systematically, things are wrong. Even our approach to success in this area, we have it completely wrong. We only bother too much about investing at the very top, and nobody actually cares about investing at the grassroots, where success actually begins. And then every now and then, we find some success, which I always like to describe as accidental success. And you can find accidental success, but you cannot find accidental failure. That's why the failure has been repeatedly happening for the past 8 odd years. And that's how we know that something is fundamentally wrong. And it's not that we haven't spoken. We have spoken consistently, vehemently in the past, but it appears nobody, and Ghana, as has often been made, we are often accused of doing a lot of talk show, but nobody actually action. So this is the first time in history where a group of journalists have said, you know what, we've spoken for far too long, so maybe it's time to do something different. So the demonstration was basically a different approach to try and put pressure on the authorities to act. And if you look at the things that the demonstrators are looking for, it's really that simple. We don't want anything complicated. Just get the basics right. And what are the basics? We speak about the way our national team is run. For example, the biggest one, we don't have a policy. So what is guiding our development? So it's almost very haphazard. Everybody's doing what they like. We're throwing balls at a wall and hoping that one of them sticks.
Yeah.
That experimental approach doesn't work. If you look at all the teams that have had success in the past, all of them have been deliberate in the development of their football. We haven't done that, Kojo. Absolutely nothing.
So
now, accountability. Every single time we've come up from an AFCON, people have been fully accounted for, not just the expenses, but also the reasons we failed. It's almost as if we're doing exactly the same thing now. We've come back from an AFCON. Nobody has fully presented the report to ascertain what we did wrong. They just hurriedly put a committee together to look for the next coach, and we're moving on as business as usual. It cannot be like that, because we've done that in the past, and it's brought us nothing. Wow. We have had issues with complete disregard with recommendations of commissions of inquiry to start through months of work paid by taxpayers to come up with the best solutions to running our football. And we were supposed to learn lessons from that. And I'm talking about the committee of inquiry from the 2014 World Cup. It made several recommendations that would have served us well, but we are completely disregarding that, and nobody is paying for that. For example, it says we should discontinue the formation of management committees for all the national teams. And yet, those committees continue to exist. And they've only become avenues for loot and share, because these guys go to tournaments, like the World Cup, for example, spend 10 days with everything paid for by the taxpayer. And at the end of the 10 days, when we exit the group stages, each of them walks with $100,000 in their pocket. It's supposed to be a sacrificial job. Every single one of these people has a full-time job. Playing for the national team is a service. So why do we do all these things? We have structural issues. We have governance issues. We have domestic competition challenges. Our league is poor. We have infrastructure challenges. Just a few days ago, we saw images from the Tamakloe Sports Stadium when Kotoko played Karela United in the FA Cup. You won't believe that as we speak, there is not a single stadium in Ghana that is fit enough to fully comply with the CAF licensing system to be approved for any international grade A CAF competition.
Wait, not one?
It's because CAF has compromised on a number of things, because we have two clubs who are playing in Africa, and it just felt like too much of a punishment to take both of them outside of the country. That is the only reason, for example, Mediama Sports Club, a club based in Takwa, with all of these fans based in Takwa, will have to go to Kumasi to play their confederation, the Champions League matches. And then Dreams FC, a club that is based in Dawu, with closest places like Cape Coast or even Accra. But they have also been forced to go to Kumasi and play matches, because the Kumasi Sports Stadium is the only one that even CAF was willing to compromise on. And so now you have a situation where Dreams FC, Mediama will play on Friday, Dreams FC will play on Saturday, Kotoko will play on Sunday, at the Division 1, the same facility. How much longer before the Ababaya Sports Stadium is also declared unfit to host international matches? It's only a matter of time. So all of these facilities we've spent taxes building, we haven't been able to maintain them. These are the issues, so many of them. And then you also have, for example, one area that's really significant. Now, all these stadiums that we have across the country, in the poor state that they find themselves, every single time that a club plays at any of our national stadiums, they still have to pay a 17% tax. Now, if you compare that, for example, to people in the entertainment industry, when they host events, the tax on their revenue is only 3%. So even that, systematically, we have a situation where it is almost impossible for the clubs to return a profit. They're already in a very dangerous situation. So the issues are so many, even in the football alone. So like I said, we've decided that we are football frenzy. We're pumping all the resources into the football. And even with the football, we are not doing well. Now, if I not want to go, so all of these things were part of the reasons people hate this. And for me, I have been a big advocate for the least finance sport. Because anybody that knows me knows that I'm very crazy about, say, track and field, for example. You know, and that track and field that we're talking about, every time we've had international multi-sport competition, track and field, what many people call athletics, always retains the most medals for this country. And yet, we invest absolutely nothing in trying to help these athletes to compete at this competition. And then what usually happens is that weeks before the competition, then the government or the Ministry of Youth and Sports will come and make lofty promises. For example, they would come and say, if you win a gold medal, you are entitled to $5,000. If you win a silver medal, $3,000. Maybe you get a bronze medal, $2,000. Knowing full well that they did not give them adequate preparations, and knowing full well that winning that gold medal or that silver medal is an impossible task.
I guess that's what Atsu meant about having the moral right, to even suggest these amounts of monies for these hard-working athletes. Fentuo, stay with us. Atsu is here in the studio with us. We're going to take a break. When we come back, look, as part of this diagnosis, let's ask the hard question. How much of this is Keto Kriku's fault? How much of this is the ministry's fault? Let's lay the blame where it should be laid so that we can solve the problem correctly. Look, actually, I won't lie, the whole thing, they bore me. It seems a problem that has existed for decades. And somehow we just never get anywhere near fixing it. Some people say it is the people we are choosing to run our FA that are the problem. But others are also saying, well, some FA bosses have done better than others. So maybe it's not them. What is the thinking at this point from those of you in the know? Is it Ketokreku?
What we're experiencing is what happens when you have two incompetent groups running football and on the government side sports in the country. The groups being the GFA and governments. And I'll start with the GFA bit before. When Anas did his expose and we saw what we saw in that video, he gave us evidence of a lot of the things people had long suspected. In the aftermath of that, what was clear was that our football needed fresh ideas. Our football needed fresh investments that will drive whatever it is that we wanted to do, because we needed money. Money to do what? Money to strengthen our national teams, because then you were going to go to the grassroots and look at the quality of the principles that were being taught to these players. Because for a long time, those who teach codes football, youth football, grassroots football is that guy who has money to buy 2 bags of water for the kids at the end of playing 2 hours of football in the hot sun, or who can bus a couple of guys to the next village or town to go and play that one chendi. So we needed something more structured, something more scientific and futuristic as far as youth football was concerned. We needed to rescue the Ghana Premier League, which was dying at that time, and our national teams weren't also doing well. In the 5 years before the Anas expose. So those were the things you expected Ketokreku to fix: our youth football, the Ghana Premier League, the national teams themselves, and generally the value that is attached to the product Ghana football. Since Ketokreku became FA president, the league has deteriorated further. Our national teams have gotten worse and worse. In fact, yesterday when they posted, is it the Starlets list of players who had been invited, and to everyone listening, just go to your favorite sports journalist page on Twitter or on Facebook. Fent is an example. I am an example. And look at their reactions anytime a Black Starlets or Black Satellites list is put out. They are dominated by players from the FA President's football clubs, members of the Executive Council's football club. So you would find Randy Abe's Heart of Lions there. You would find Makado's Sempi. You would find, and Makado is the vice president of the GFA. You would essentially find anyone who matters to the GFA. You'll find their players there.
So are you suggesting that these players,
they are not called on merit?
They are not called on
they are
merit.
not called on merit. So you'll find the players coming from Nagod FC, Sempefi, the other club. So Vision FC. You find Dreams FC. You find Still Believe, and Golden Kicks. The problem that industry players have had is that, Kojo, when it comes to youth national team call-ups, players often are pulled from clubs that have street and industry integrity. What that means is that over time, those institutions, the value of the players they promote, they produce, have been proven to be true and stand the test of time. And so if any club, the buying clubs are looking for young players to pick, whether for immediate sporting success or economic success, which means players with high resale value. Over time, it has been proven that players who come from those clubs meet these requirements. And so in the past, you'd realize that a lot of our players came from Kim Faisal, came from Liberty Professionals, came from Tema Youth. And until the Anas expose, I think Entire Lies and to some extent Dreams FC as well. But that establishment has been swept aside. Instead, you have found, and you see, the football business works such that the investors or the clubs who pay for these players, they would go to where there is a guarantee on return on investment, because they pay top dollar for these players. But instead, we have replaced the clubs who served us so well with the people who funded our elections and the people who voted for us at the last Congress. So you find that golden kicks. You'll find some. Look, there was a club in Ghana that, in the month that the club was formed, they had their players, 3 players being called up into the Black Starlets and the Black Satellites.
How?
Yes, but it did happen.
Were they from other teams that they joined the club?
So beyond that issue, you have the mismanagement of the national teams.
Wait,
right?
Can you tell
in
us who owns this
2022?
team?
That's called who owns the team. We'll get in trouble when we do that. Because in 2022, a member of the executive council, and we like him a lot, we call him Wofa, Nana Odro Safo. And for those who watched our coverage of the demonstration, he was one of the guys who was hooted at when the crowd saw him. Because the things he said in the past, the things he's done are still fresh in the memories of people. But the association is so far removed from reality that they cannot read the room and anticipate that in a very hostile environment like the one we saw on Wednesday, sending the one man who has told people that I would rather watch Nollywood and telenovelas than watch the Ghana Premier League.
Good Lord.
Sending him there was a bad idea, but he did.
Okay.
But that's not even the focus of this. Odro Safo was the man in charge when the black maidens got banned. Why? We age cheated. And the shame of it was that it was in a match that Morocco beat us anyway. But they were so upset by the scale of what we did that they reported us to CAF. We got fined $100,000. And knowing our guilt, the FA could not, and decided not to challenge the CAF verdict. So we took it on. But 8 years before that, and like I told you, Kojo, we had a situation where the Black Starlets at that time also got sanctioned. We were banned for age cheating in an AFCON under-17 match versus Cameroon. That slot went to the Central African Republic. So you have a litany of all of these issues. You have the fact that they have not done anything about growing the local league. We are not calling players on merit for our national teams. The management of the game itself generally has been poor. But all of this is nurtured, not tolerated, nurtured and enhanced and supported by the government. Because if the government had a semblance of what proper sports administration was, the first thing they would have done after we got banned in 2022 was that the national team is a national asset. It is not a matter of the FA is a private entity, so they should do. The first thing would have been call the FA president, call the executive council, and demand answers, because the team that flew to Morocco went there with taxpayers' money. It is your national team. They are managing the team in trust, right? So when they fail, you need to get answers. When it is disgrace on that scale, because this was the second time in 8 years, assuming the first one happened under a different administration, but this was under your watch.
I don't know why that even matters.
They didn't do anything about it. But you see, where you get to see the full scale of the incompetence of the current government in terms of sports is their relationship with the sports ministry and how with the Ghana Football Association and how generally they've treated sports. A doctor called me 2 weeks ago in the wake of the whole anger after our AFCON elimination. I think the sports ministry had started making attempts to get the semblance of a state policy for sports. So they started talking to people. And from what he gleaned, there was not sufficient basis from the information he had been given to believe that this was well-intentioned and a long-term idea. And as far as he was concerned, he was not going to sign up for anything that was cosmetic and not functional. In that conversation, one of the things that came up was, before the AFCON, the Black Stars of Ghana had to train in Kumasi. Now, for electoral purposes, Kumasi is a very significant place to the NPP.
Yeah.
It is their stronghold. The Black Stars play the bulk of their matches in Kumasi. So if you have invested in your own stronghold, in sport infrastructure, a state-of-the-art, a modern one that fits purpose, meets the specifications as far as CAF and FIFA licensing regulations are concerned, if they come to Kumasi, they should not struggle to get a place, right, to train.
Yeah.
The Black Stars combed Kumasi and could not find a place to train.
How?
Eventually, it had to take one businessman, Dr. Kwamichi, to give his training facility to the Black Stars.
Imagine that.
Yes, but it is the same government who decides that we are going to approve an $8 million budget for one AFCON, when other governments are investing millions of the same dollars in constructing facilities that can house the national teams, not one national team. So Egypt have done it, Morocco have done it, right? And here's the thing: since 2004, Ghana has received tens of millions of dollars in subventions from FIFA. If you are interested in sports development, you take interest in the money the GFA is getting from that side and say, this is our plan. We feel that if you are able to support us to this extent, right? And that's why I'm saying this goes two ways, because at this AFCON, those who listen to AFCON today on Joy FM and on the Joy Prime channel heard me say a lot of things about Mauritania. And for the purpose of this conversation, Mauritania is not the United States of America.
Of course not.
In some respects, Mauritania is not even Ghana. Slavery is still not totally outlawed in Mauritania. But the same Mauritania have got a federation who used the same FIFA goal project and forward money over time to finish the National Olympic Stadium, because in 2015 they were on the verge of being thrown out of their country to play their international matches outside because they did not have a stadium. So they were forced to think, and they used those monies to complete the stadium. Beyond that, they've built a national medical center, a national technical center. They've used those monies to restructure their women's football, to structure the men's league, and invest some of that into. So if you go to Cape Verde, I think the other time before the AFCON, Gary gave us a wonderful analogy of what they have used theirs for. We have seen other federations who have invested their monies into technical centers, medical centers, verifiable, tangible capital sports projects. The FA doesn't do that. The ministry itself. And just to conclude, Kojo, I have a strong belief that the president is not interested in sports, and either does not have advisors who know what to do with sport in this country, or he doesn't listen to them. Because you cannot, could you explain how in the last 10 years we have had two, so the Brazil Commission of Inquiry, and then after the last AFCON, Parliament did their own inquiry. Both of them established, and this is not gossip or gesture or assumption, both of them established that there is an unholy alliance between the Ghana Football Association, the Sports Ministry, and the Ministry of Finance to rip this country off, in the sense that the budgets that are presented to them do not make sense. How is it that, could you tell me that you have a plan for sports, and yet sport continues to decay? And people love to throw about the fact that, oh, we've constructed the most astroturfs, but there needs to be a meeting point between that infrastructure and what it does to the talent. The person training the talent, how that person came about, right? The qualification of that person, and what it is in the sports syllabus that they are even teaching the talent.
Right. Fent, I want to bring you in here because something that Atsu said is really, a problem for me. Look at all the money that goes into football. What government puts into it, what the FA gets for it. The amount of money that is given to the Black Stars for each of these tournaments. Fent, what does the money get used for? Who gets it? Where does the money go? Do we have Fentuo on the line?
Very
Yeah.
easy question to answer. So basically, when they prepare the budget, a chunk of the budget goes into paying, and this is probably the easiest question I've ever answered, bonuses, per diems, and travel. That's it. Those three. And a lot of it is unaccounted for. So I'll give you an example. Now, we've gone to the AFCON, and we have paid each player $20,000 as appearance fee just for being called up to represent the country. And this money is paid even before they have kicked a ball. For Christ's sake, do you need to be paid that amount of money even before you have kicked the ball? Now, on top of that, we earmarked to pay each of them somewhat $20,000 plus dollars if they made it out of the group. That is for doing the bare minimum. So, what exactly is the reason you are going to the AFCON? To get knocked out in the group stages? Why must we put a prize on making it out of the group, on doing the bare minimum? That's one. They go there, everything is taken care of, and they still pay them per diem every day. Now, apart from the players, every management member official is also entitled to these things. So one of the reasons, Kojo, they insist on these monies being paid even before the players have kicked the ball is because they are officials who benefit, who know fully well that we might not qualify. And so if they didn't tell the government to pay this money and we didn't qualify, they might not get their money. So if the players get paid, they get paid. So essentially, they tell the government, if you don't pay let's give the players the money before they even go to the AFCON. It will motivate them. But truly, the reason they are doing that is because the moment you agree to pay the players, you have to pay them too. Because the players don't tell the ministry to pay the money before they play. The officials do. And their only interest is because of what comes to them as well. So we're throwing money away in things that we shouldn't. Because listen, the over-monetization of the national team was what resulted in the chaos of the 2014 World Cup. And a commission of inquiry established that we should stop paying appearance fees, especially paying it in cash. But you're not going to believe this, that at the AFCON in Cameroon in 2022, January, the Parliamentary Select Committee sitting that Atsu alluded to, they established that we paid each player in Cameroon $20,000, and wait for it, by cash. Again, even though the commission kicked against it and completely made it illegal. Now, my disappointment is that the committee established this, and there is no sanction for whoever took that decision, and their recommendation is, let's not do it again. So this is where all the money is going. So we are paying bonuses we shouldn't be paying. We are paying appearance fees that we shouldn't be paying. That's the only reason, for example, Nigeria would go all the way to the AFCON final with a budget of less than 2 million. Zambia, same, they did better. Namibia, same thing, they did better. And yet, we had a whopping budget that we intended to spend. On what exactly? More than half of that money was going to go into paying bonuses. Now, we've spoken to the players. Not a single one of them goes into the AFCON hoping that the only benefit they want from this competition is to get paid money, is to get paid bonuses or appearance fees. Inaki Williams has not come to play for the national team from his base in Spain because he wants $20,000.
Precisely.
Another player, Andre Ayew, he's not going to the AFCON because he wants $20,000. You can't say that is the reason Jordan Ayew is going to the AFCON. So for the players themselves, these monetary motivations that we think would encourage them are not really the fundamental motivations that are needed. Because listen, if ahead of an AFCON, we actually sat down the players and said, the country is going through an economic turmoil. Things are hard right now. There is a 7 million prize money for winning the AFCON. Even for semi-finals, you get 4 million. If you get to the quarterfinals, you get 3 million. You go, we don't have any appearance fee, no bonuses for you. But if you get to a stage where we get some decent money, we will go into that money and give you some reward from it. I'm not against paying players or motivating them with finances. Absolutely not. But I'm saying that has to be pegged at a higher level other than doing the bare minimum, because that is just encouraging mediocrity. Because then now what we've established is that for 2 consecutive AFCONs, you can go to the competition, get kicked out in the group stages, and get $20,000. For any player who went to Cameroon and didn't win a game, and went to Cote d'Ivoire, didn't win a game,
She's walked away with $40,000 for going to the AFCON and not winning a single match. Why do we keep doing this? It goes back to what I said, because some officials who manage the national team also benefit from it, and that money means more to them than it does to the players. So no matter what, they will insist that that money is paid.
Wow.
And that has to stop.
Well,
because
this is
clearly throwing money at players has never been seen to be a panacea for success. We've done it many times, and the results have been colossal failure. There is no two ways about it. We experimented with it. It has not brought any positive outcome. Why would you keep doing it?
Well, this is clearly what pushed you guys onto the streets. Well, it's been a couple of days now since that demonstration. I mean, tell us, I'll start with you, Fentuo. I mean, tell us what the reaction has been and whether we are being inched in any way closer to a solution to this ridiculousness.
Well, as for a solution, obviously we have established, and in the petition, all the things that need to be done. And all the things that need to be done are easy. From the problems, we find the solutions. So when we come to our national teams, for example, the template is there for us. The only reason our national teams have been successful, it has been because we have built our national team based on youth talent. And we are getting our youth development and our youth national team's development completely wrong. So we need to get back to the basics where we are allowing and selecting only the most talented players for our youth national team, irrespective of which club they play for. Because that preferential treatment that we're now giving to players who play for certain clubs because of their affiliation to people at the FA, it has to stop. That is the reason, Joe, the national team that we have today, the Black Stars, they're just a bunch of players that we selected all around Europe and asked them to come together and play for the national team. At the AFCON, they just ended AFCON. Only 5, in fact less than 5 players from the 27 players we took to the Cup of Nations have played together at youth level ever. So in other words, not any of those players, 90% of those players we took to the AFCON have never represented Ghana at youth level. And there's a reason for that. Because they are the most talented players that go on to do well at the big stage. Because they didn't have affiliations with people at the FA, they never got selected at youth level. And the ones that actually got selected were not the most talented, so they never made it to the top. And so now those that go to the top are the ones we never invested in as a country or as an FA. So when they come, their first loyalty is to themselves, is to their careers rather than the country. Now, just oppose that with what you saw with the Michael Essien. Michael Essien, Sule Muntari, all these players represented Ghana at under 17 level in 1999, at under 20 level 2001. Every single one of them that got a contract abroad have the national team to thank. So when they are called back to come and play, they see it as a service. We have the pyramid completely wrong now. All the players that we call to come and play for our national team right now, the country or the FA contributed absolutely nothing to their careers. So when they come, the loyalty is to themselves. And the template is there. The only way we can be successful and have a group of very dedicated players playing is to have them play at the youth level first. Because we've had 2 great generations of Black Stars players. The Essien generation, that came from our under 20 of 2001. And then you have the Andre Ayew, Jonathan Mensah, Edia, Samuel Ikup's generation. They came from the 2009 under 20. How is it possible that we now have a national team of 27 players and only 5 of them have ever played for Ghana at youth level? It makes absolutely no sense. So we need to get the youth football development right. Then you have the issue of infrastructure, which I don't want to go too much into because Atsu has already mentioned it. Yeah. Credit to this government, they say that they've built a lot of astroturfs. That is true. But those astroturfs that you're building, how much is it serving the community and how much is it contributing to the talent development? Because listen, you built over 100 astroturfs, and yet when the Black Stars were looking for a place to train in Ghana, to camp in Ghana, Not a single one of them was good enough to host the Black Stars in Ghana. What does that tell you?
Work done zero.
So there is no attention to detail, no attention to quality. Because not a single one of them was good enough to host the Black Stars training session in this country. And yet there's over 100 of them. So what are you building? Most of them, to be honest, lack quality. Then you saw a recent video of one of them being blown with the Astro, the turf being blown apart by winds. It cannot be. And then you look at the government saying that they have also built 10 youth resource centers. 10 youth resource centers with natural grass and a running track. The construction of which started in 2018. This government is almost ending its second term at the end of this year. And I tell you right now that only one of them has been commissioned. And even the one that has been commissioned has not been put to use yet. So you started the construction of 10 youth resource centers. It's been, 6 years in the making, and not a single one of them during that period has contributed anything to the talent identification or to addressing the infrastructure challenge, because none of them is in use as we speak. They're either not completed, or even when they have been commissioned, there's still so many outstanding issues that they've not been put to use. So in real essence, where is the infrastructure, and how is it serving this country? So the government needs to take charge, and I agree with Atsu on that, because they've been in bed with the FA for far too long. There's very little accountability. So,
I'm going to wrap up this thing now before my high blood pressure comes. So, Atsu, listen, in a minute, if you get a phone call from the Minister of Youth and Sports, he says, Atsu, you know what? I'm at my wit's end. Tell me, step one, what do I need to do to solve this problem? What will your advice be to him?
Cut the spending to the Black Stars significantly, and look at not just investing into the football development, but actual sports development. You are putting some infrastructure in place. Give it meaning by making that infrastructure accessible and connecting it to football development, like we've said. That can only happen if you improve the resource persons, here in case the trainers, the instructors who are teaching these kids, because at that level it is not the work of the GFA. The PE teachers are the universities, are the secondary schools and the basic schools. That has to come from government, right? That is what you need to do first. One thing that I think could be a game changer, to borrow Keto Kreku's words, is finding a way.
He's not using them.
Yes. Finding a way to actually functionalize the sports funding components of the sports bill. It is not questionable that up until now, over 90% of the sports budgets goes into compensations and salaries. What that basically means is that in the year, the sports ministry does not have money to do anything. Not to organize seminars, not to train people, nothing. So we basically have been running sports without a fund. All the ministry does is to pay salaries. If you want to have projects that move the needle and develop sports, you need money. But what that Kojo also goes to show you is that there is no plan for anything. If there is a plan, that plan will require money.
Indeed. True. And Fent, thank you both so much. Thank you. I mean, you've made it clear. You made it clear that there's no work being done, and yet people are enriching themselves on the back of a national passion that is yet to be fulfilled in decades. So we know what to do. Let's set about doing it.